What is a musical instrument? At its most basic, a musical instrument is a means of generating sound and a means of controlling that sound. Well, if that's the case, isn't a tape recorder a musical instrument? I can generate sound when I press the play button, and I can stop it and manipulate it and therefore control the sound. Tape recorder becomes an instrument. And if it's a new instrument, it demands new music. Pierre Schaeffer is the new musician to write that music. But actually, he starts with discs. And actually, he's not a musician, but that's kind of beside the point. Bear with me. He invents the term musique concrète for what he's doing. That's French for concrete music. And what he's actually doing is making music with the tape. His idea is that he'll take natural sounds and record them directly to tape and manipulate them instead of writing out notes to be played by some sort of abstract instruments. In this respect, one interesting thing happens with the tape, and that's that it becomes both the score and the performance itself. Schaeffer is very heavily influenced by our friend Luigi Russolo, and he starts playing around with turntables with different records of recordings of noise on it. And one of the things he discovers with these turntables is that he can lock the groove so it will keep playing one little bit over and over again instead of continually moving inwards. In 1948, he creates Étude au chemin de fer, using disc recordings of 6 steam engines straining and accelerating rhythmically over the rails. He does this by setting up these turntables with all these different records and manipulating them with his hands and with levers and clutches so he can change the speed, make them go forwards and backwards, and mix them back and forth. And he cuts all of this to one new record, which then makes his score and his performance for the piece. He takes this piece and 2 others and creates a radio broadcast of this first Musique concrète in France. Although his compositions are considered to be more of an experimental essay rather than serious works, they are significant in 4 ways. One is that musical composition was accomplished by a purely technological process, manipulating discs. The second is that you could replay this work multiple times and it would be exactly the same every time. This is a big deal, because up until now, every time you heard music, it was a little different. One performer might have made a mistake or played something a little louder or a little quieter, but it was never exactly the same. His third innovation was that his replaying was not dependent on human performers. He didn't need to get anybody to come in to recreate his music. All he had to do was take his record and drop it on his record player. And of course, the sound elements he was using were concrete. They were actual natural sounds. Schaeffer also invents an instrument called the phonogene, and with this, he's able to take one loop of tape and transpose it up or down by 12 semitones. This is the precursor to an instrument called the mellotron, and is in effect the forerunner of today's modern digital samplers, because samplers really are just tape machines. In 1949, he adds his musician friend Pierre Henri, and together they set out on a crusade to transform music, using these new techniques that they have developed that they call musique concrète. French musique concrète is emotional and intense. It draws its ideas from the futurist notion of working with noise. In 1951, they're able to get a studio funded and supported by French National Radio. And composers from all over the world come to study and work at this studio because it's the only one of its kind. It's almost the first electronic music studio. Any composer can come in and they'll teach them how to cut up tape, manipulate it, and do all the things that they're trying to do. Well, plenty of German composers come to check this out, and man, they get upset. The Germans need a musique concrète studio of their own, so they begin to develop one. And they also begin to develop their own approach to musique concrète. So 2 separate schools start to form, a French school and a German school. They're very similar in a few ways. They both had very small equipment pools consisting of generally a tape recorder, a bandpass filter or 2, an oscillator, a few musical instruments, maybe a theremin or 2, and some splicing blocks. But they also had a number of differences that are very important. The French school was concerned with recording and transforming natural sounds. In particular, they wanted to transform these sounds in somewhat expressionistic ways to make very emotional pieces that were more about evoking feelings than anything else. The German studio was built around the German National Radio and was founded in 1951, located in a studio there at the stations. It was established by a noted musicologist and composer and critic. The German school follows Webern's ideas and is concerned primarily with creating purely electronic sounds and very precisely manipulating them, aiming for total control of all elements of a recording. This is as opposed to the French style, which takes natural sounds and is designed to make the listener feel something. One of the leading exponents or students of this German style is a young man named Karlheinz Stockhausen. And Stockhausen makes a number of fantastically intricate and complicated pieces using these German musique concrète techniques. This is incredibly laborious work. You remember Thaddeus Cahill and his spinning tone wheels, and Fourier talking about building sounds out of sine waves? Well, this is what Stockhausen is doing. He's got one sine wave oscillator and two tape decks, and this is how he builds sounds. First, he sets his oscillator to one frequency, and he records the sound the way he wants. Boo! Then he sets his oscillator to the next frequency and records the next part of his sound. Boo! Then he records the two tapes together onto one tape. He repeats this process over and over until he has one sound that he wants. And then he takes that final tape, splices it up, and now he has his first little sound. It could take hours or weeks to build one sound or one little segment of music, and one mistake could mean that he had to start all over again. The best example of this style in its fullest form is his Song for the Children. Like a lot of this music, it's more important for its ideas than the actual music itself, which can be very difficult to listen to and at times downright boring. But the important thing to remember is that it is a brand new music and something truly of the 20th century. Without the invention of the tape recorder, it could have never happened. It was the tool and the instrument that allowed electronic music to enter into the 20th century.